Hey there, everyone. My name is Brendan from Crypto 101, and welcome back to another crypto market update. And over the last 24 hours, we have seen a steep recovery in the crypto markets. And this is mainly due to catalyst after catalyst continuing to come out, really proving that the crypto markets still have a long ways to go before they top out. Now, we're going to be covering all these different catalysts, all the news events, all the things happening on the charts in today's video. But just to name a few of these, we have Meta, which is now considering investing part of their $72 billion in liquid assets into Bitcoin, kind of adopting a MicroStrategy-like approach. We have JP Morgan expecting over $15 billion in net inflows into some of these more mainstream altcoins like XRP and Solana. We have BlackRock even saying that crypto's growth has outpaced mobile phones and the internet. We have a new administration coming in talking about this idea of a Bitcoin reserve, policy changes, and really just a full change to the way that the SEC is looking at crypto, and so much more. So if you want to stay up to date on everything that is happening here, all that we ask is that you hit that like button, you hit that subscribe button, and you maybe check out some of our other content or podcasts over at Crypto 101 if you really like what we got to say here. So let's go ahead and kick things off with what is happening on the charts, because this is where we've seen this massive recovery from Bitcoin, kind of recovering off this low, and you can see it went all the way down to around 89, almost 88,000. And it recovered off this $89,000 mark all the way up to nearly, 97,500. So what this means is that, over the last 24 hours or so, really in about a 19-hour window, we saw a 9.5% increase in the price action of Bitcoin, which is about $8,500. So it's a really, really big, steep recovery. And if we actually kind of zoom this out from an hourly time scale to a daily, here we can see that 90K support ultimately, while we did kind of pierce through it a little bit here, we closed well above that 90K support level, and it continues to hold as it has for the last month and a half. So all eyes are still on that 90K support zone for Bitcoin. The buyers are clearly very comfortable at and below 90K, which is why we saw so much aggression on the buying. But now that Bitcoin has kind of seen this big recovery, it begs the question, why is this the case? Why are buyers so eager to accumulate Bitcoin down here beyond it just being a support level? And that's where we start getting into some of these fundamentals, some of the news, like, Meta's board, which has been advised to invest part of its $72 billion in liquid assets into Bitcoin as a hedge against the dollar devaluation or inflation. Now, they even say here that, this proposal has been citing positive comments on Bitcoin from their CEO, Mark Zuckerberg, right? He needs really no introduction. Most of us are probably familiar with who this guy is. But we are starting to see a pivot in a lot of these big tech companies. In fact, we just saw Microsoft voting on this topic just over a month ago, or just around a month ago. And now here we are a month later, and we could be seeing the same thing kind of happen with Meta. Now, Microsoft initially shot it down. It's not to say that they can't revisit in the future, but they already actually have a little bit of borderline indirect Bitcoin exposure, which I think is a big reason why they shot it down. But if we're looking at Meta, it's a little bit of a different situation. Now, we know that some tech companies, the big ones like MicroStrategy, but also even Tesla, have and continue to hold Bitcoin on their balance sheets. And I think what we're seeing now is that a lot of these other big companies, especially tech companies, are looking at Bitcoin as a positive, asset to be holding, really just internally, especially as inflation has been all over the place over the last 4 to 5 years now. And so a lot of these companies are probably trying to front run this idea of a strategic Bitcoin reserve. Because if the US does that, they obviously don't want to be buying too long after that, after prices have appreciated. So this could just be them looking at the idea of this before it actually happens and trying to front run an idea like that. And we've seen other countries try to do that as well. I think we were just talking about the Czech Republic or the Czech National Bank about a week ago, who was trying to do exactly that. Now, we also have JP Morgan over here saying that, hey, they believe that Solana and XRP and some of these other mainstream altcoins that have ETPs, which are slightly, different from ETFs, these things could attract up to $15 billion in net inflows. And these are probably two of the top assets that we are looking at for getting ETF upgrades from their ETP status. And both of them have already had ETF applications, which so far have not been able to go through. However, as we'll get into in just a second, people are looking at a lot of policy changes, especially when it comes to this new administration under Trump, and also with Gary Gensler leaving in just under a week's time. Now, what this means is that, we could see a lot of these lawsuits get dropped. We could see a lot more cryptocurrency ETFs. And I know from personal experience, I've had the awesome conversation of talking to some of these ETF providers like Bitwise, like 21 Shares, like some of these other ones, and they are heavily interested in getting more altcoin ETFs, specifically when it comes to these two assets amongst, a handful of others. So looking forward, could we see a lot of money, potentially billions or tens of billions of dollars in inflows into things like XRP and Solana? I think the answer here is yes. It's very possible. And again, people are really trying to front run this idea that we could be seeing a lot of crypto growth and stimulation and really just kind of an ease in the regulatory environment that would allow for a lot of things that we haven't been able to do over the last 4 years, maybe even over the history of crypto. And so we're entering into this new era. And I think that, JP Morgan, despite what Jamie Dimon has kind of been saying on the news, kind of disagreeing with his own company, I do think it's a weird dynamic, how he's the CEO of his company and everybody at his company is in disagreement with him about crypto and they have all this crypto exposure at JP Morgan. Yet, he's saying the opposite. So I don't know if there's some sort of market manipulation going on there or what. But nonetheless, JP Morgan remains very bullish on the crypto markets. And I think that we can see more crypto ETFs, specifically altcoin ETFs, to come our way in 2025. Now, JP Morgan isn't alone here, as in neither is Meta, because we saw BlackRock actually kind of chime into the conversation just yesterday and say, hey guys, crypto has quote unquote outpaced growth for both mobile phones and the internet. And this is a really, really big deal. And what we're seeing now is a record level of adoption. We're seeing all sorts of just positive catalysts. This is kind of heading in that same trajectory. And I think, when we look at this probably 5, 10, 20 years down the line, people are going to make those internet-like comparisons. I mean, there's that age-old video of a bunch of news anchors talking about what is the internet. It seems scary. It seems like what people would do illegal purposes for, and they do all these illegal activities on there. And is anybody actually going to use this? It seems too complicated, yada, yada. And they're talking about the internet. And, here we are 20 years later being like, no, this is a core part of our everyday lives. And I think that we can look back 20 years from now and probably see similar interactions with blockchain tech. So BlackRock's coming out here remaining very, very bullish on the crypto markets as well. And here we are with kind of this final catalyst saying, hey, Donald Trump could issue an executive order on his first day. And I saw this circulating around, I think it was from a tweet yesterday on X. And it was talking about, hey, his first day in office, he's actually considering signing an executive cryptocurrency bill. And maybe not his first day, but one of his first days. But they're looking at his first day in office, potentially signing one of these things. And that has gotten people very excited, very optimistic. And I think what we're seeing now is just that the best is yet to come. And there's still a very, very bright future for this. So if you're looking at tech companies, if you're looking at financial institutions, if you're looking at the government, all of these people tend to be pretty optimistic on it. And we always like to say over here that the trend is your friend. Now, there has been a little bit of choppy price action here lately, largely due to the Fed. We've talked about this a little bit. There's kind of been this disconnect between what the Fed thinks that they need and what they want and what maybe institutions and retail investors want. So we kind of have this more hawkish approach, I think we could say that about the Fed, and a much more dovish desire from the general public. And so what this has done is this has really kind of suppressed all risk on assets. So things like, traditional indices, stocks, even the crypto markets have been seeing some red in wake of this news. But I think that we are probably going to see a pivot as, not only the U.S. economy is very healthy, we see falling inflation, we see good manufacturing numbers. We see good job and labor numbers and all this other stuff. And so it doesn't look like anything too awful is on the horizon, which is why I think the risk markets are all going to end up fine. And especially when it comes to crypto, I think it has several added layers of security where it doesn't necessarily have to be tied, and it historically is not always tied to the US markets. So I'm looking at this saying, hey, regardless of kind of what happens over here, the crypto markets are very optimistic. And so I think it's hard to be bearish on them with where they're sitting. And this really kind of brings us into the final point, which is just saying, hey, this top Ripple lawyer says that this Gensler anti-crypto crusade is imploding, and I could not agree more. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. There's a ton of change and positive regulation that is coming our way, and this is literally we're in the final stretch, the final week of Gary Gensler's anti-crypto reign, and then we enter into a new era where we don't have to deal with any of this. And we flip from being anti-crypto to not only being neutral, but very pro-crypto. And I think that's where we can see a lot of these assets really, really explode this year. So we're in that final stretch. I hope everyone's hanging on tight. Buckle up your seatbelts, because the rocket ship appears to be getting fueled as we speak. So that's going to go ahead and wrap us up for this video, everyone. I hope all of you enjoyed. Again, there's going to be price choppiness probably here in the not so distant future. We're going to have our big ups. We're going to have our big downs. It's just part of the crypto market. But what I want to do here is zoom out, show everyone what's happening, and say, hey, regardless of this choppy price action, maybe we even see a new local low. Maybe we go back into the 80s. But I think over the long term, the one thing that's clear to me is that we can go much higher than $108,000 on Bitcoin. And I still think a lot of these altcoins can have a way to go as well. So thank you all for watching. We hope all of you did enjoy this video, and we'll see you in the next one. Now, for everyone else here that is not part of a crypto community yet, we want to invite you over to check out some of those links in the description down below. We have a really great crypto community where you can get plugged into like-minded traders and investors. And if you want to join that, go ahead and head over to Crypt Nation. You can also check out my good buddy, Bryce Paul, who wrote a book, and we have a link to that attached in the description down below called The Crypto Revolution. So appreciate everyone hanging in here, and until next week, we'll see all of you in the next video.